The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any other agency, organization, employer, or company. The content provided in this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be construed as legal, financial, medical, or professional advice. Always seek the advice of a qualified professional with any questions you may have regarding a particular matter. Listener discretion is advised. Your support can keep the show going, so we have a little favor to ask. If you'd like to be a superstar and support the show, please go to our show notes. There is a link to Spotify. Every little bit helps, whether it's buying us a virtual coffee or becoming a monthly supporter. Thanks for being awesome and tuning in. We couldn't do it without you.
It is man. 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 It is man.
Zone, which is, they give it to addicts to basically take away the dopamine pleasure that you get when you drink or you take a drug. And it worked. I mean, I took a pill and I made my usual drinks and I was just like, but then I just stopped and went back to it. So I finally had to humiliate myself badly enough to do it on my own.
Yeah. Yeah. Trust me, I tried to smoke. I was like, come on, but it was too disgusting. I'm like, okay, I guess I quit now. So thanks for that. So, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of It Is Ma'am with Mel and K. I'm Mel.
Hey,
I never know where she is. There
Hi.
she is.
And I'm ma'am.
And today we have Ma'am. Today we have Josh from the Disaffected Pod. And Josh, I was just telling Kay that I asked you onto the podcast strictly based on how much I love your tweets, because I feel like we're the same person living in two separate bodies.
Are you sure I'm not the bitchier one?
Maybe. So yeah, but actually I did, to do my homework, I did go back to your most recent episode where you were talking about Donald Trump. So I guess we'll talk about a little bit about that today, but Jesus Christ, that was heavy and I was already in a shitty mood.
I almost started crying on the show, which I really don't want to do. But yeah, it was, this was not a good few days, was it?
No, I only made that face because I cry on this show all the time, but that's me.
I'm one of those crying men. I cry a lot more than other men. So I really, really work hard not to go farther than occasionally getting choked up in public, because I can't, I'm sorry, it just doesn't wear the same on a man.
Correct. It's true. It's true. Kay, do you have anything to say before we get started?
I'll just chime in on my crying habits, which is rare, few and far between. More often than not, I just kind of look at Mel like, why are we crying today? And I just kind of hope that eventually she will organically stop crying.
She's
I'm
like this.
very sure what it is. So,
yeah. Yeah. So, well then, yeah, let's dig into that. So first of all, I immediately morphed into an American bald eagle the minute he popped up with his fist. I was like, I'm the most fucking American thing that ever happened. So yeah, did you have that moment too?
Yeah, and I sort of interrogated myself about it, because I was like, okay, I'm having an immediate emotional response to something that is in the realm of mythic imagery. So am I letting myself get caught up in an emotional moment? But I did have that emotional reaction. I was, I did cry, but I was doing this, I mean, all this is first draft stuff. Who knows if the three of us are going to feel the same way in a year that we feel when we're talking about this stuff today. And I always feel like I have to do a lot of pre-defending of things I'm about to say in the era we live in a way that I didn't have to do it 20 years ago, because you have to get all of the not alls out of the way. You have to get out of the way I understand that other people will disagree, and I'm not saying that I'm 100% right, and I am willing to discuss it. Now that I've done this, may I please offer my hypothesis without being immediately dunned to attend? Do you know what I mean? So anyway,
we need like a free speech Bill of Rights fucking disclaimer. It's like, here it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, I mean, I don't. Well, I'm sure your audience knows where you two have been politically, but this is the first time we're talking, so I don't know where you've been. I used to be a woke lefty. I was a Democrat. I came from a single mother household who was in fact an actual welfare queen, and I spent most of my life defending people like this and saying, goddamn Republicans just trying to kill single mothers, and they're gonna put my gay ass into a conversion therapy van, and yes, in the past we did have some problems and some bigotries that were actual problems, but looking back on it now, a lot of them that I made a big histrionic fuss about were not nearly as bad as I thought they were. So that's where I come from. And it wasn't until 2016, with a personal crisis in my life, that I started to change not only my relationship to my family, but completely unexpectedly, my political and cultural views began to go to the right. I didn't plan it. I didn't like it at all in the beginning. But that's what happened. And so the night Donald Trump was elected in 2016, okay, let me tell you how retarded I used to be.
Let's hear it.
I mean, I'm retarded in new and different ways now, but this is my old retardation.
By the way, we can only be friends with people that say retard. Please continue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have retarded family members too, so it's okay.
So do I.
It's okay.
You get a pass. It's funny.
I don't.
Actually, I'm lying. They're all dead now.
That's because they're retarded.
Actually, literally, yes. I'll write about this sometime. The night. Okay, so do you remember the debate between Hillary and Donald Trump, where he was sort of stalking her around on the stage? I reacted yes. He's like, and she's like, I reacted very badly to that. And I reacted very badly to Donald Trump's persona. And I didn't understand it at the time, but I understand it now. I come from poor white trash. I literally come from the trailer park. And I come from mental illness. My parents are severely personality disordered, narcissistic, and unstable and abusive. So I'm very keyed to certain mannerisms. They prick emotional triggers in me. And Donald Trump's sort of over the top Queens, New York, quasi machismo really aggravated me emotionally. And so in my head, I decided that he was a representative of the men that I knew in childhood who scared me, who were actually bad men, who behaved and sounded like he did. So I'm watching this debate with Hillary, actually for once in her life looking a little bit pretty. And I got completely taken in. I actually saw her as maternal and comforting. This is how distorted my lens was. And I saw him as the abusive man. He was basically the man who beat my mother, right? So I voted for Hillary, and he gets elected, and I'm up at 2 a.m. crying. I mean, I am the person I now make fun of.
Aren't we all?
Fast forward to his reaction to being shot the other day, and I found it inspiring. And I looked at him, and I know it's a moment of extremis. I know it's a dramatic moment. I also know that he is a seasoned performer. He is a television man. He is a personality. He has a set of skills. Factoring that all in, I felt like I was seeing something genuine and authentic. And the fact that just after that man almost lost his life and he's got blood running down his face, that he stood up and composed himself and led people. He set an example. He didn't cower. He raised his fist and he said, fight. You know, he communicated to people, not only am I not dead, but I'm still here with you. Are you here with me? And it just gave me chills.
And even if I don't make it, because I don't know what the fuck just happened, you keep going.
You keep going. Yes.
That's what I heard. Right.
And I could hear in my head, I finally understood what he meant when he said, they're not after me, they're after you, and I'm in their way. That's what I was thinking. He was right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my response when he got up and did fight, and of course we watched it 1,000 times, and I'm just sitting there going, fuck yeah, like I'm at a football game. I mean, just like something came over me. I mean, it was my husband's like, and I'm like, look at it. Like,
I've seen so many people say, I think like millions of people reacted the way you and I did. Well, Kay, I mean, well, first of all, Kay, where are you on the globe?
I'm right in the middle of Scotland, so very far away from all the action, but very tuned into it. You know, you can't escape global news like that. And you're going to ask me about what I'm thinking over here in Scotland.
Yeah, because it's different. You're not an American. You don't have a direct personal investment in our politics. What does it look like to you?
The way you described your kind of past retardation around Hillary and your responses to Trump being elected in 2016, you know, that's when I would say I first started paying any attention whatsoever to American politics, to be perfectly honest. You know, my own life was happening over here. And I felt very much the same as you. You know, I did have a kind of a instinctive response to Trump. I didn't think much of Hillary at all, but that maternal, you know, that stuff that you perceived, that's absolutely what I would have had her down as well. But yeah, it's been the past kind of 2-3 years, I've started to really see him for what he truly is, and not just this, you know, this big ego in a suit with a comb over. And, you know, he's a good guy, and he really does want to lead. He's capable. And yeah, I felt emotional when all of that, well, it was just shock and surprise and what the hell happened. And then, yeah, I had that same kind of felt really pumped up, just the way you guys are describing, you know, so everyone around the globe is feeling it. It's amazing. Hey, quite a moment in history. He's such a badass.
Don't you think now, see, and I have to be clear and honest. I have many times in the past described Donald Trump is narcissistic in my view.
Okay.
I'm no longer, I was sure for a long time, I'm no longer sure he qualifies all the way for narcissistic personality disorder. I'm not sure about that anymore. I do believe he is heavily narcissistic. But that's in the context of a couple of things. One, there are few, if any, people who in our era have the inclination to and the wherewithal to get to that level of politics who are not high on the narcissistic scale. Right. Number two, there are different kinds of narcissists. And I think Barack Obama and Joe Biden, for example, are the far more dangerous type of narcissists than Donald Trump. And all three men are different. Obama is, I would call him a covert narcissist. He's very urbane. He's very polished. He's a smooth speaker. A lot of what he says is empty of actual content. But you don't really realize it for a while. It's hypnotic because he's so...
a word salad guy. I need to go back and listen to some of his speeches.
Well, no, he's not word salad like Kamala Harris. It's not that what he says doesn't make syntactical and grammatical sense. It does make sense.
Okay.
What she says is just ridiculous and dressing, blah, 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 right?
I know.
But he speaks in broad, platitudinous, quasi-religious language that sounds nice and makes grammatical sense, but doesn't actually have much of a core to it. But I think he's a wicked and evil man, Obama. I think Biden is also a wicked and evil man. Joe Biden has been a nasty son of a bitch his entire life, and everybody knows it. And anyone who doesn't know it only needs to go back over 40 to 50 years of videotape and listen to him in the Senate, listen to him in hearings. He's just an absolute jerk. Donald Trump's narcissism, in my view, now is he's more like an insecure little boy. He's got some deep insecurities inside of him. And I think I can see this because I have some of them, I have some fairly deep insecurities myself. And we all build defenses against those things. And his defenses have been bombast and I'm the best. I've got the most beautiful cars, the most beautiful women. I'm the smartest. My generals are the smartest, right? His vulnerability, in my mind, is he is too susceptible to flattery. He feels really warm and good inside when people say nice things about him, and his judgment drops off. He's like, okay, this one said nice things about me. He's in my cabinet. So I don't think he has a lot of discernment when it comes to judging people who are going to be loyal to either him personally or to the mission of the office and the party. And I hope that he's learned some lessons since last time. But narcissistic or not, insecure or not, I don't think he's mean. I don't think he's cruel. I don't think he's sadistic. I don't think he's the monster that I thought he was. That's what I think.
He's not missing the empathy. And I keep pointing that out to people as well, because I myself, one of the reasons I'm interested, so you don't know this about me, but when lockdown happened, I saw The Vow on HBO about the Nexium cult. I'm sure that you know all about Keith Raniere, right?
I am, yes, I am
okay,
reasonably conversant with the outlines of that story.
So I was like, holy fuck, I would have joined that cult. Those are my, like, I live in LA. I'm a fucking yoga teacher. I don't practice it now because it's retarded, but like, I didn't know that when I got certified. I didn't realize that all the yogis were pedophile fucking cult leaders. But anyways, that's for another episode for another day.
They're not like that
Sign
over
me
here.
up.
What the hell?
I'm talking about like Yogi Bhajan, like the anyway, we'll get into that. So I listened to too many podcasts. But love.
Oh, sorry, I was having Tina Turner flashbacks.
Love. Love is love. When I was in my yoga teacher training, I listened to Yogi Bhajan on a recording doing that and cried like I was in a fucking evangelical church.
That is retarded.
Well, you were in a cult.
Yeah.
Right? I was in a cult too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us about your cult.
Yeah. So what was I even fucking starting to talk about? It was you were talking about all of the Trump shit. What was I fucking saying, Kay? This always happens, by the way. It's called a menopause moment.
I don't know, but I think Josh was telling us that there are 5 types of narcissist, right? And we talked about covert narcissism and then the kind of grandiose Trump style.
So I watched The Vow and I was like, holy fuck, I would have joined that cult. And I got really, really interested in all of that. Started watching every cult documentary. I was already reading every psych book. We got locked down. I was like, fuck it. I'm already doing all this work. I'm going to get a degree in psych. So that's what I did. And my plan was to then go on, get a master's in coercive control. I don't know if that's going to happen now because I'm doing this and I don't have money for it and blah, blah, but I'm so into all of that. So I didn't even know that was your jam until after we had booked. And I was like, wait, that's his whole thing.
Girl, I am the cluster bee whisperer.
I love it so much. Okay, so and then another reason why I'm so into this that I don't talk about that much because I know people will take it and run with it, but I've got no more fucks left to give. But I have very narcissistic traits.
Okay.
I mean,
no.
I mean, there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lights surrounding my face right now, but I have empathy. So anyways, that's my point. Like there are different, I'm not running around trying to ruin people's lives, but I can be a little self-centered or what have you. And anyway, that was just the point that I was.
I love this. Let's get all of the confessions right out of the way.
Yes.
There's so my show Disaffected has a thesis. There's an underlying hypothesis. Can I take maybe 2 minutes and give because I think that it might help you and your listeners understand why I talk about the things I do the way I do.
Mm-hmm.
I'll try to do this in a very condensed version. If anybody's actually interested in more of this, I've got a couple of episodes on it they can listen to.
We're in no rush, but yes, like don't feel
okay.
like you have to be. Yeah, we're excited right now to learn this. I know it.
I was raised in a cluster B household. My mother would qualify for a full diagnosis of both borderline and narcissistic personality disorders, and she has secondary psychopathic state. She's not a global psychopath. She does not lack all empathy, but she is able to get into that state and do and perform literally psychopathic actions. I've been no contact with her for 8 years. I had to actually evict her from my house 8 years ago. It was a big crisis point in my life. I was trying to decide whether to commit suicide or check into inpatient psych. The quick and dirty, and probably only those of a certain age will get these references. But if you want to know the type of person my mother was, I'm going to give you 3 movie characters, okay? And if you amalgamate them, you'll come up with an approximation. The 3 are Joan Crawford and Mommy Dearest. Okay, not we weren't glamorous or rich or anything, but that sort of thing. The Margaret White, the mother in the 1976 horror movie Carrie, the abusive religious fanatic mother. My mother was not a religious fanatic, but she had a lot of that woman's affect and sort of emotional possession. And if you've seen the movie I, Tonya, about Tonya Harding, the American figure skater, who she was raised by such a mother, played by Allison Janney, and her mother in that movie is very like my mother, both in appearance and spoken affect. So that is what I grew up with. And there was a stepfather who was a wife beater, an attempted murderer, and a pedophile. So basically, I grew up in movie of the week. Right. Mm-hmm. You know, I grew up in the family that doesn't exist in real life. It's just on Lifetime television. That was my family. And nobody gets out of a household like that completely sane. No one. In my view, every single child who grows up in a household like that can be described at least as having complicated or complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And I see that as the base condition. It's the distortion of child development emotionally. It's the base condition from which springs symptoms that we often diagnose as diseases, but they're not diseases. They're symptoms of the underlying trauma. Major depression, in my case, major depressive disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, panic disorder, Tourette's-like tics. I've been diagnosed with all of these things, but the base is that PTSD from childhood. But I believe I have, Mel, you and I don't know you well, but I can already tell this. We're both performative people, right? We have performative personalities. I like to be in front of a camera. I like to make people laugh. I like to make them gasp. It gives me a thrill. Mm-hmm. And it makes my ego feel good, right? Mm-hmm. I have other motivations. I genuinely want to teach people things. And I think when I do what I do well, the entertainment helps the lessons sink in. And I've taken the same approach when I had a white collar professional job as a consumer advocate, talking about very serious subject matter in a humorous way. So I understand that I have that performativity too. And I think that, but I also have a higher than normal level of histrionic traits, and I have some borderline traits as well. And they come out under stress, sometimes quite badly. I suspect, I can't know this, if I were ever diagnosed, it is unknown to me, but I suspect that probably from age 17 through much of my 20s, I probably qualified for a borderline personality diagnosis myself. The thing about personality disorders that I'm sorry, this is, yeah. Hi, baby. Hi, say hi. We will cuddle later, okay? She does this every time I'm giving attention to anyone but her.
Oh, she's delicious.
She's imprinted on me. I didn't do the taking. I just took her in, but she was taken too early from her mother. And she literally treats me like her mother. She will try to nurse me in bed. It's adorable, actually. Most of the traits that we talk about in the cluster B personality disorders, narcissism, histrionic, borderline, antisocial, psychopathy, most of these traits are human traits. They're not personality disorder traits. We all have some mixture. So help me. We all have some level of narcissism. We all have some level of projection. We are all capable of doing splitting, that is, seeing things or people in black and white rather than in shades of gray. Most of us at some point in our lives are going to express most of the behaviors and traits that you find. The personality disorders, these are people who have a huge level of these traits, and they're consistent and stable over time and across social contexts. That's what separates somebody who just may be high on the histrionic end from somebody who's got full-on histrionic personality disorder. So that's what I think about that. I don't know. Maybe you see it differently.
That actually makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, because
is there anyone in this world that is trait free entirely? You know, does any such person exist?
I don't think so. There are people who get down. I mean, like, you know, my therapist is so goddamn well regulated. I don't know whether to be jealous of him or want to trip him down the stairs. But no, we all have that.
When he goes home from the office at the end of the day.
That's right. I don't. Thank God he doesn't see me when I go home.
So I took a couple notes while you were talking. And so a few things that I wanted to mention were, I had an old show. The episodes are hidden because there's a lot of personal stuff in there and I don't want it out now. So anyways, but one of the episodes, I'm literally wearing ooh, you're frozen. I hope you're still there, Josh. Oh, wait, is everybody frozen? Everybody's frozen.
Me too.
Oops. Okay, I'm gonna wait. Okay, there we go. Everybody's back.
Okay.
Okay. I'm literally wearing a fuck Trump pin.
Okay.
And I'm laughing about, I mean, people think Trump's gonna be the one to save the children. I mean, he's like the last person that would do that. Like, and now I'm like, holy fuck, they might actually be satanic pedophiles who drink adrenochrome. They really might be. Oh my God. And I'm pretty sure Trump's not. And holy fuck, I mean, and even that sentence just came out of my mouth is insane. But yeah, that was one of the things I thought.
What sparked your political change of mind?
Yeah, a couple of things. Yeah, because I campaigned hard for Bernie in 2016. Okay. I went to his thing. I have Bernie buttons. I have the whole
I have some gossip about when you're done with your story. I'll give you some gossip you'll like.
So yeah, part of it is I went back to school. Now I have been in school this whole time, but not I've been in and out of school for a bazillion years. I majored in child development, transferred to Cal State LA, decided what the fuck every cell in my body is screaming no. What am I doing? I don't want to be a fucking preschool teacher and I hate this school and I hate everything about it and get me the fuck out of here. So that was the end of that. But so there was me having the prior experience, like earlier, of what school was like, what they were teaching, what the students were thinking, what the climate was like. In 2017, in one of my junior college classes, I had told the class to listen to this one Sam Harris podcast. Now everyone fucking hates Sam Harris, but back then most people didn't know who he was, right? So the teacher was like, yeah, let's listen to it. We come back to class, we're talking about the episode, the chat's going fucking nuts. I don't need to listen to no white guy tell me nothing. What the fuck if I said I don't need to listen to no black guy tell me nothing? They would have had my head. I was like, what am I seeing? And it just went on and on and on, just talking shit. And that was the first thing that was a little bit weird. Then when I did my Title IX training, there was something about Now this was before they were making men be women, but there was
Okay.
something in there that was weird. Let's not get into it. I'm making this too long. And then the main thing that did it was, so then I go to get my psych degree. I end up going to a different college. I'm not going to say which one. And I am interviewing for an internship that I really need because it's for a research lab. If I ever want to get my PhD, I need to have that like on the resume. So I'm in this interview and I'm told to, I'm not asked if I'm comfortable, do this. I'm told to state my pronouns and blah, blah, blah. There are 3 women interviewing and 3 women being interviewed. Why are we doing pronouns right now? I don't know what the fuck's happening. What? And I had to do it because I needed the internship. I want to be the pain in the ass? I'm going to be the pain in the ass right now. No, I'm not. And everybody knows that I'm not. So I didn't. And then at the same time, I learned about Abigail Schreier's book. And where did I learn about that from? From the Sam Harris podcast. Not. So I read that book. I got the internship, by the way, and I was fucking reading that book out loud to everybody when like all the people in charge were gone. I was like, you guys, can you even fucking believe they're doing this? And everyone's looking at me like I'm insane, but I was like, I got to get this out. So I was having my speech compelled. There was something else I can't remember now because I'm brain farting, and I've said it 1,000 times on the show, whatever it is. But yeah. And then I got on Twitter. Then I got on Twitter and heard my first detransitioner story. It was Helena on Tucker Carlson. And I was like, I heard her tell her story and my brain was like, of course you can't change sex. Like my brain like did a somersault and everything was all of a sudden just like, this is all some crazy bullshit. Then I found Jennifer Billick, and then there's just on and on and on. Yeah.
Thank you. Kay, I'm curious about you. What's your trajectory in your life in terms of your cultural and political outlook?
Okay, so we've just had a big change in our government over here. We're now under a Labour government again for the first time after 12 years.
Lots of luck.
Yeah, it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying for me, particularly as a mother with teenage kids. It's frightening, but there's a lot of tactical stuff going on over here as well, because, you know, we have unionists versus those looking for Scottish independence. And so there's a really tangled kind of, it's like there's stepping stones to get to where we need, and we can't just make that one jump to where we need to get to, you know. So yeah, this Labour government, we'll see how badly they hurt us. The big thing over here right now is immigration being challenged. That is a massive thing for us. I think it's at the point now where people are considering leaving the country for the first time in their life, you know, after being British citizens for decades. And that's quite sad to see. I am particularly patriotic as a Scotswoman. You know, I do consider myself British. I am British, but I'm very, very proud of. But
you're also Scottish.
Yeah, and you know, the SNP did us no favors at all. So we're kind of on our knees at the moment over here. That's how it feels. We're just on our knees waiting for someone to rescue us. Maybe Nigel Farage will do it. I don't know, but it's, yeah, I'm certainly more leaning to the right than I was, you know, even 3 or 4 years ago.
Were you a Labour voter earlier in your life?
Earlier in my life, yes, admittedly, yes. And now it feels like we've got a choice of 2 turds. That's, you know, 2 big steaming piles of turd. And so people are starting to look more at, you know, independent candidates and smaller parties and just trying to get them the momentum that's required. So maybe in 10 years.
Right. You can't get there from here. I'm more conversant with British politics than the average American. I mean, I don't know what it is you do, but I listen to Lotus Eater's podcast. I pay attention. I've got friends in the well-known friends in the UK who, you know, keep people educated about what's going on there. And you have a lot of the same problems that we have in the States, immigration being one, although I think that problem has been going on longer for you guys. than it has for us. And I've looked over at, I know that the Tories just got absolutely routed, and they had it coming. I get it, because I've looked at them for the past 14 years, looking back, and I'm like, how are you not Labor? I'm serious. What do you mean you're conservative? They have done nothing but push trans, men in women's prisons, illegal or undocumented immigration, persecute the native British white people for objecting to the violence of immigrants. Much like what's happening in a lot of Western Europe. And I don't know what you guys are going to do with Labor in power for at least 5 years, if I understand it correctly, unless there's some election called.
Protect our own. I think that's all that we can do right now, because we're watching our girls being raped and bodies being dumped in canals, and it feels like it's been overnight, although there has been this slow 14-year long build up to where we are now. But for a lot of us, we feel blindsided, and we feel like we just woke up one day and it was like this, and we don't really know how we allowed that to happen. It's terrifying. So how we get through the next 5 years is we look after our own. I think that there's going to be a lot more civil unrest. I do see a lot of violence becoming mainstream over the coming years, which is really unfortunate. But when the government doesn't take care of us, then we take care of ourselves.
That's right. And that's, that stuff's starting to happen here. Mel, I'll be interested in what you think about this, because, that question of how did we end up here? How did we let this happen? I've come to the view that I'm sorry. You are really being a pill. I love you, but my God, you need to. I'm going to get the water. I'm going to get the squirt bottle out.
Not the squirt
right here.
bottle.
Don't forget.
Papa showed it to you.
I know. Yeah. You know what? Yep. She cowers just seeing it. Good. That's what I want. Sorry, it was my mother there for a moment.
One of your friends popped up for a sec.
I know. How we got here. It is my view now that the root evil is individual psychopathology. It starts in the home and it starts in the individual. Most things are both causes and effects, but there are places where you can tease out when something is more of a cause or more of an effect. And I think that I no longer believe that ideologies, whether they be political ideologies, religious ideologies, cultural ideologies, they're all at base, they all have a religious component. I no longer believe that ideologies make people bad. I think it's the other way around. I think bad ideologies preferentially attract broken people. So, and I will use myself as an example. I was a liberal Democrat in the U.S. sense, a wokey. I was part of the New Atheist crowd. I went to the conferences with Harris and Dawkins and Hitchens and all those guys. My views are very different than they were then. People who come from homes like what I came from, abusive homes, are very vulnerable to the left's siren song, because the left tells you that, okay, your family doesn't love you. They never understood you and they don't deserve you. We're your new family. You'll find comfort and succor with us. You're not responsible for the fact that you can't get a good job. You're not responsible for pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. You are a victim of a systemic form of discrimination. It's either race, or you've been held down because you're gay, or because you're a woman, or because you are of a minority religion. All this endless list of protected characteristics. That's certainly what made me vulnerable. It's having an external locus of control. Meaning you don't think that you're in charge. I know, Mel, I know you know what this means, but I don't know what the audience knows. meaning you don't feel that you have control over the direction of your life. You are a passive object that is manipulated by forces outside of you. They might be people, they might be the system man, you know, like capitalism or settler colonialism man, you know. I'm so tired of hearing 35 and 40-year-olds sound like fucking dumb undergraduates.
Yeah.
But that's what I think.
Pose.
And I think we are living in a cluster B era. I really do. And here's what I mean by that. Yes, I am saying that I believe there is a higher percentage of fully diagnosable cluster B personalities in the population than there has been in living memory. Yes, I think the rates are actually higher. Number two, for whatever constellation of reasons, our culture, and I mean Western culture, our culture now not only does not disapprove of and keep in check this emotional instability, this histrionics, this manipulation, this pretending to be a victim in order to get special privileges. Not only do we not discourage it socially the way we used to, and I remember that world because I'm going to be 50 years old. I've been around long enough to know that things have changed. We valorize it. We validate it. We literally applaud it. We say, you go, girl. You speak your truth. You go out and show the man, right? We actually have culturally elevated listed symptoms of borderline narcissistic and histrionic personality disorder, and we have called them good and beautiful. Our morals are inverted. That's what I think we're living in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Can't disagree with that. So what the hell do we do? Because, you know, you're the man that's going to save us all because you understand all these personalities. So how do we deal with these people, you know?
That's why
is there more? Why is there more? Because cluster B people are having kids and raising them in cluster B households, and so
it's you know, it's like that thing, it's turtles all the way down. We can go back, but there's always another step further back, and I don't know where to stop. I don't know where the best level of analysis is. We can look at, you know, I think a lot of it probably has to do with economics. So World War II, we didn't take what you all took in the British Isles. We didn't have the Blitz. The only attack on our land was Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, right? So we didn't have to sacrifice the same way that Europeans did, but times were tough here. You know, we had food rationing as well. Millions of women were suddenly in the workforce making bombs, you know, while the men were off at war. But then the war ended and we had the incredible economic affluence of the 1950s that birthed the Western consumer culture. The standard of living is quite literally in the 50s elevated common people to a level of luxury that not even royalty enjoyed 200 years ago, right? That soft life, and we live a very soft life right now, comparatively, I think allowed us to let our selfishness and our acquisitiveness and our self-centeredness get out of control. We were catered to. We weren't challenged enough. I think that has something to do with it.
Okay. Yeah, makes perfect sense. I mean, I know I've got teenage kids, right? And I'm acutely aware of my own mental health anomalies, right? It's because I've been through stuff too. I've lived a life too, right? And so I observe my teenage kids carefully, you know, from a distance, but carefully, because I kind of want to see how much of me has rubbed off on them, how much I've messed up my own kids. You know, all parents have that conversation with themselves, and it's something that just stays with you all the time. So I'm constantly assessing how much I've messed up my kids' psychology, right? So far, so good. They seem to be doing not too bad. But what I notice about you know, even my kids who are pretty well motivated and they're happy and they've got everything that they need, my God, the laziness, the amount of prompting that they need just to, you know, because everything is just served up. Everything, you just press a button and you have what you're looking for now. And it's just a completely different world. And I don't know how parents keep up with that, like how the world is changing behind us. And we were never told how to guide children through that, you know. So add to that complexity a couple of parents who are messed up in the head and are going to let that rub off on their kids. I mean, it makes sense that it's just multiplying and spreading. It's just terrifying. What do we do when all of us are just walking around with a personality disorder? You know, do we just tear each other apart?
Well, what do we do? I'm sure there have been other eras in which cluster B was in the ascendant. I mean, you know, look at the Third Reich in Germany, look at Mao, look at the Holodomor. You can go back in history. Look at the Tudor court. I mean, you want to talk about a carnival of cluster B, the Tudor court, right?
Yep.
And other monarchical courts as well, but a particularly virulent, and not just Henry VIII either.
Mm-hmm.
Here, maybe I'll piss off some of your British listeners. Elizabeth I was indeed a glorious, storied monarch who occupied an incredible flowering in England and Europe during her reign. However, and she had a bad childhood and she was very badly used and she had reasons to be how she was. But that bitch was personality disorder too. She was incredibly borderline and covert narcissistic. She was manipulative and dilatory. And I'm sorry, let me, this is a private obsession of mine. Let me not go down this territory. So there have been other periods. What do we do? What I think I can do, and maybe in 10 or 20 years, I will look back and say I should have done it differently, but people need to understand human nature. And in our era, they need to understand cluster B psychology. They have to know it by name. They have to understand it conceptually. They have to know how to identify the behaviors. Because even like it, I would guess, now, if you look at the literature, you know, the DSM and the psych manuals, they would have you believe that somewhere between 1.5% and 3% of the population has a cluster B personality disorder. Bullshit. Maybe that was true 50 years ago when they first started doing their prevalence studies, but they need to update their books, because I would guess, and believe it or not, there are some mental health pros out there who guess even higher than me and think I'm underestimating it. My therapist is one of them, interestingly, because he thinks I overgeneralize about cluster B. I would guess that fully 10% of the population is fully personality disorder diagnosable. Not 2%. 10%.
Mm-hmm.
But
you're going to want to talk to someone that we're talking to later this week, Dr. Mitchell. She's written a book. It's not come out yet, but she is talking about her data, and I believe she uses the 10% number.
Oh, okay. Thank you for letting me know. I'm going to tune into that, because I would, you know, I don't have anything empirical to back this up with, but I have developed fairly reliable pattern detection and intuition about this stuff. And I do make mistakes, but you know, when I check myself on this subject, I'm right most of the time. And I'm not even trying to brag, but it's simply true. I'm good at this.
Is that your childhood hypervigilance? That's
it is.
coming up.
I do have hypervigilance. I do. Yeah, I do. Absolutely. And you know, PTSD and hypervigilance, this is a condition, a disorder of false positives. But I've made the choice, particularly having to interact in the online social media world. I've made a conscious choice. I accept the false positives. I'm not sorry that I'm hypervigilant, and I'm not going to not be hypervigilant. I have calculated that for my interests, and I believe for the interests of many other people as well, I am getting more benefit. I get, even if 20% of my hits are false, 80% of them are right. And that protects me better than being more open to it. That's the choice that I've made. But the problem is, so we've got this 10% of personality disorder people, but we have a huge percentage of the population who doesn't fully qualify for personality disorder, but who has a very high level of cluster B traits, and or they are under the sway of a central cluster B, right? So it has a multiplier effect. And I think we've hit a tipping point where almost half the population at any given time is acting as a functional cluster B, even if they're not fully diagnosable. So that's why my business partner Kevin and I do this show. We want to teach people what to look for, what to call it, what it means conceptually, where it comes from. Why do people behave this way, right? To me, there is no more interesting question for me personally than figuring out why humans do what they do.
We have
Other
the same
peop-
brain, don't we, Kay? Aren't like you
Yeah,
and I are
for
two
sure.
little peas in a pod? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to pick people apart and put them back together again and figure it all out, how they're wired. Absolutely.
And it's about, I mean, I'm trying to figure out why I do what I do, why I feel what I feel, but I'm trying to do that by looking at other people and looking at myself. And humans, all of us, we are a species. We have just as much of a set nature as a cat has a nature, a lion has a nature, an eagle has a nature and instincts. This is one of the things the left doesn't believe. The left doesn't believe in human nature. The left believes in the tabula rasa. They believe that infants are born as complete blank slates and can be made into the perfect man or woman, right?
Mhm.
That's a very dangerous Third Reich, Margaret Sanger, eugenics sort of idea of the human template. It isn't true. We have hardwired, evolved instincts. And beyond basic instinct, I'm not talking about stuff like I'm hungry, I eat. All animals have that. But we also have a sexed psychology, right? Speaking in general, men have a certain psychology, women have a certain psychology. And one of our big failings is it's considered socially taboo to recognize that reality. You are called a misogynist or a bigot or a pig or an unreconstructed intellectual troglodyte if you don't believe that men and women are interchangeable psychologically. And I used to believe that, but I don't believe it anymore. And there's lots of exceptions in there too, right? So, I'm gay, and typically gay men, this is true for lesbians in a different way, but we're neither fish nor fowl. We are in many ways an admixture of feminine and masculine traits. I have a much more female typical emotional profile. I'm very sensitive. I cry easily. I get angry easily. I get scared. I don't cower in the corner. I still do the thing I have to do even when I'm scared, but I get these stress reactions. I react more like a woman in a lot of emotional situations. So there is room in there, but
yes, ma'am.
Right. Mamita.
See, mommy.
Yeah. So yeah. All right. That's what I have to say about that.
There are a couple things. When Kay, you had originally asked, like, what are we going to do about it? And I know that one of the things, community keeps people in check, and we don't have community. We don't even have elders in our own families keeping the kids in check. There's no one keeping anyone in check anymore. It's like, so there's that. There's no shame. So there's no tradition. There's no, I mean, in different little pockets there are, but there's no overarching, these are the manners we're going to use. I mean, just everything's fucking degraded into a hellscape. Community would help with that. Community would help with all those things. There's something else that I wanted to point out. So my family, I was born and raised in San Francisco. My mom was the oldest of 9 children, and they were all very, very poor. Their parents were drug addicts. My grandfather beat the shit out of my grandma mercilessly, and the oldest kids, right? So
I was going to ask you where the cluster B in your family came from. Now I know.
Grandpa Frank. And who knows who did it to him, right? And then on the other side, they live in Southern Illinois, very Bible Belt. They're Christian. The ones that are living now, not the ancestors. So like my aunts, uncles, cousins. And they have so much less, I don't know what goes on privately with anybody, but they have so much less visible dysfunction. The family still meets for holidays. Everyone's still together. The kids are all, in sports and doing the healthy things. Yes, they go to church, all that stuff. The other family, None of us fucking talked to each other. As soon as grandma died, she was the last one. It started falling apart. Someone else died 2 years ago. It has further fallen apart. Everyone's an addict or a lunatic or something. I'm both. It's fantastic. But my point is, that's another thing, because I know a lot more people are talking like Russell Brand and what's her face who's gone to Christianity after she was a Muslim. Who was that?
Ayaan Hirsi Ali.
Yes, like a lot of people are looking at Christianity now because, and I have a direct example of that actually. Now, correlation is not causation. I don't really know why these two families look so vastly different, but I have my goddamn guesses.
I think your guesses are correct because I see the exact same thing in my family, and I see it when I look out and analyze other. I mean, look, it's just undeniable. Being a leftist in our era correlates with high levels of mental dysfunction, addiction, unhappiness, loneliness.
I'll tell you something else about that. So you had mentioned the correlation between depression and like poverty, low income, socioeconomic status. That is a huge correlation. It's definitely part of the cause. And that, again, single mothers.
Yep.
Fuck themselves. Now, I understand that everyone, my great grandma got her teeth knocked out. So then that got passed down to the one that was trapped with all the 9 kids, then trained my mother, don't put up with any man's bullshit. So my mother didn't. So then she got divorced, but that economically fucked us, and it's still fucking us. It's still fucking my mother. It's still fucking me, because that 2 income, you cannot compete with it. There's so many things.
And they act as causes and effects toward each other at the same time. So, it fucked your family economically, but it also fucks you psychologically, because this is part of human nature. Children need a mother and a father. They do not need 2 mommies. They do not need 2 daddies. I'm one of these gay people. No, you are not. We are not good enough. We are not a sufficient replacement for a mother and a father. And I no longer give a flying fuck how many faggots that pisses off. Any arrangement other than a stable partnership of mom and dad, and hopefully, we've lost this to hopefully extended family. That's another big part of our problem. We don't live multi-generationally anymore. But any arrangement other than that is depriving the child of a role model of that sex and how to interact with that sex. That begins at home. And we see the consequences. I mean, this, look at criminality, look at the statistics, and the vast majority of criminals come from single mother homes. The absence of fathers tracks all of these dysfunctions.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm now thinking I think of all of these things all the time, but the minute I had to start interacting with boys, I started drinking a lot of alcohol because I didn't know anything about how to do it. So I'll just let everyone else, I'll just be here and you can all just shove me around. That's what we'll do.
Yeah. I know. I started drinking as a teen. I did, people hear me talk about, the lascivious, debauched way that LGBT is living its life. Well, I used to live that life. I started drinking as a teenager. Older men started picking me up for sex when I was 15 or 16 years old. I was incredibly promiscuous, drunk, drug user. There's very little I haven't done. I reject it now. It was self-abuse. It was self-harm. It was contributing to the degradation of the community that I was in. So, these things they're defenses. They're like, you said, Mel, I didn't know anything about interacting with boys, so I started drinking a lot, right? This is the story of so many girls and some boys too. If you don't get that solid foundation at home and you don't have those role models at home, you are not equipped to deal with the world the way people are. And you are going to fall in with that crowd. I don't know how it felt for you, but when I thought those were my people, I thought they really cared about me. I thought I was going to find love there. I thought I was going to find glamour and excitement, and didn't turn out that way.
Yeah.
I found some excitement, but then I paid for it.
Yeah, exactly. There's a huge price to pay for sure. Yeah. So community, family,
to go back to what Kay was saying, what do we do? I don't have a whole answer. I mean, I think I'm really good at a few things, but they're not enough. But the portion that I can contribute, we have got to start demanding boundaries, not saying we're going to have boundaries. We have to start demanding to be treated in a certain way, or we cut contact with people and we put up barriers that make it impossible for them to interact with us. We need to shun people from our lives who will not respect what used to be ordinary civil boundaries, emotional boundaries, physical boundaries. And we need to say no. The fact that we live in a society where a borderline meltdown in the middle of Walmart that includes smashing crockery and screaming at security guards, the fact that instead of that immediately being pounced on by the passersby who say, fuck this shit, no, you're under arrest, right? Instead of that, nobody does a goddamn thing except film it and put it on Instagram. That has to change. And I'm afraid this is funny because Mel probably told you, Kay, I had a misperception about what kind of podcast you were doing. I thought you two were hardcore feminists. And I was willing to come on anyway, but I was a little nervous. I was like, oh my God, they're going to fucking hate me. But so anyway, that was my misperception, but this has been really difficult for me. My relationship with women psychologically is still very troubling to me, and something I'm working on, because I spent most of my life as a simp and a male feminist, and I was it all comes from my relationship with my mother, because like many cluster B mothers, she turned me into a surrogate husband. She depended on me when I was a child to caretake her emotionally, to do levels of housework and household running that were beyond what I should have had to do, right? But I thought I had internalized the idea that men were born essentially bad and had to be tamed and corralled by women, and basically had to approach our lives from an apologetic stance. And I did that most of my life, and it was wrong. And I realize why I thought that way now. And now it has made me furious, as well as becoming a cluster B society. I believe we in the West have become a feminized society. The feminine and the masculine are out of balance with each other. And again, it's a generalization, and it's more common with leftist women, but it has affected all women to some degree. It's not only perfectly socially acceptable, it is socially applauded for women to say the most disgusting, chauvinistic, vile things about men, to take advantage of them financially, to take advantage of them in the family courts, to falsely accuse them of abuse or rape, to falsely accuse them of social abuse because he said a mean thing to me on the internet. We girl boss this, girl boss that. Look at the goddamn assassination attempt, right? Look at these short, fat women trying to protect a 6'3" man. Did we have a brain tumor for breakfast? Right? This is absurd. But this is because we live in a society that's like, girls can until it gets us killed. But this is because we live in a society that's like, girls can until it gets us killed, right? Men, and I don't know how to do this, and I take believe me, I take all the social punishment for this. There are so many women out there who they do believe it. They believe I actually am a misogynist. I hate women. I would kill women if I could get away with it. I'm disgusting and irredeemable. This is what they think about me. Fine. Men need to start telling women no and shut up. Shut up. This is not your place. You have nothing to say about this. You are not in charge. Unfortunately, very few people are doing it right now. And it's as we've gone from a place where women had legitimate gripes about the way they were treated in the workplace, the unfairness of marriage and divorce and inheritance laws. There are legitimate gripes that reasonable people across the political spectrum can look at and say, that was a problem that needed to be rectified, right? There is no such gripe now. Yet, 2024 women are unhappier than their great-grandmothers ever were, and they actually believe they are oppressed.
Yeah.
I mean, you two may see it very differently. You are women and you live as women. You may see it differently. That's what it looks like to me.
I was sold and I bought eagerly the Carrie Bradshaw lifestyle. And I even had a Mr. Big. Although that show fucking knows that they wouldn't have ended up together. And God knows we didn't. So that was a pure ridiculous fantasy. But yeah, it seems like there's always this big overcorrection, because it's like, yeah, I don't want to have my teeth knocked out and not be able to have my own credit cards and don't want to have to, have a full-time job and take care of the baby and clean the house. And but staying single till you're 40 and infertile, I'm not going to have kids now. I was too busy being my own woman, doing my own thing, taking care of myself. Right. I can pay my own bills. Okay, well, I'm not gonna have
queen slay.
Right. I got nowhere with that, but and also I'm not gonna, and it's fine. It's not for everybody, whatever, but I'm also not gonna have grandchildren. It's not nice to tell people that it's all bad just because maybe it was bad for you. Now, I don't know what the answer is, because you want to warn people, but
would you have listened sort of 20 years ago?
Right, but if there had been some other example, maybe not just listening to, hey, do this, but a different example.
Yeah.
Something to look up to be like, oh, well, maybe it would work. I also, like you, I thought men were total pieces of crap. I thought they didn't have feelings and that they only wanted one thing. And so I ran my life like that. And neither of those things are true. So that's fun. To run your whole life on something that's not true.
I know. You know what it is? You know what it is? The sexes, I think, we've been trained to see the opposite sex as the stereotyped version of the worst excesses of the opposite sex, rather than as real people. So you said a minute ago, I thought men only wanted one thing. Well, they don't want only one thing, but yet it is true that men want a lot of that thing. Yeah. Men want much more of that thing generally than women do. If we can, we all used to know this. Our grandparents knew this, right? Like every human has always known this. It's only recently that I don't understand why things are working out this way, right? Men will fuck anything at any time. That is just male nature. The reason why gay men are such what is the word I'm looking for? Why they're just such perverts is
sluts.
A complete sluts. Slut. Is because that's male sexuality untempered by female disapproval. There are no women to check us. If you're men, if you weren't, gay men do what straight men would do if their women would let them. Right. So that explains many of the problems in gay culture. But yeah, Mel, like it's not quite parallel, but you say, I'm not going to have children, I'm not going to have grandchildren. Well, I'm not going to either. And that wasn't something that I thought bothered me until recently, but I'm in we call it middle age, but I'm closer to death than I am to birth at this point. And I'm not going to have that in my old age. And, you're not supposed to say this if you're a gay person, but I'm not going to, at this point, if I could go back and rewind the clock and, would I have chosen to be in a very small percentage minority that had a lot of mental health issues and a really toxic culture that would leave me childless with no one to be there for me in my old age? I don't think I would have chosen that. Thank you very much. I do feel the loss of what I'm not going to have that I couldn't appreciate when I was younger.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to say something else about, you were saying a female culture, and I was just thinking of, Judith Butler has got, her bullshit has turned our culture upside down. And I was thinking, would we rather have Freud? I think we were better off with the cocaine and the Freud than we are with the delusion and the Butler, honestly.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I think so in a very serious way. Freud got some things wrong, but he got a lot of things right. He did some things wrong, but he did some things right too. And his contribution, his best contribution, is the concept of the unconscious, that humans are motivated by things that they do not have in conscious awareness. And I think our experience since, the early 20th century, when he formulated this, has borne this out. And whether modern therapists like it or not, the entire project of modern talk therapy is based on the Freudian idea of the unconscious. At least the helpful kind of therapy is. Despite his missteps and places where it seems clear that he over-sexualized things that weren't really sexual, but he also found sexuality in places that people weren't willing to look, and it really was lurking there. I think it was Freud. But I'm not sure. It may have been a Freudian elaborating on this, but I think it was Freud who first proposed part of what we now, I guess, would call object relations, that homosexuality could be interpreted as a form of narcissism and arrested emotional development. And I think there is something to that. I really honestly do. Like most human characteristics, there are biological and environmental factors that contribute in various proportions. But I've noticed this for a while. Unpopular, but unpopular doesn't mean untrue. There is this strong and obvious correlation between the outcome of adult homosexuality and having come from an abusive and broken home. And it's just simply true. If you look at gay men, and I'd be surprised if you didn't know this anecdotally. Most people I've talked to have noticed this. The chances of a gay male friend having an enmeshed, overprotective, or domineering cluster B type mother and an absent father is sky high. I have known very few gay men who I've known well enough to know something about their family life who did not fit that pattern. So that's another thing that I like to talk about on the show because it's so taboo. And I think the same thing could be said for somebody who built her identity on being a feminist or, a Black liberation type activist. When we make a facet of our personality, our sexuality or our emotional temperament or some other facet, when we make that our primary identity, as gay people, gay men at least, often do, and I did for a very long time, we overinvest in something that is not the totality of who we are. We put too many eggs in one basket, and one day we will drop that basket and break those eggs. It happened to me, and I see it happening to other people. But if you can get to a point, and I've gotten to this point, there are a lot of things in my mind that I have not conquered yet, but this is one of them. I no longer have an ego attached to my identity as a gay man. I no longer think of myself. I only describe myself as a gay man when it's relevant for the topic of conversation, right? I'm a person. I have a personality. And that my sexuality is just one part of who I am. But most gay men have not gotten to the point where they can detach their ego investment from their identity as gay men. So when they hear anything that contradicts born this way, they experience a subjective personal attack on their soul. It hurts. It scares them. I know it does because it scared me and I can see it in them. They are terrified because there's a weakness there. But if you can get to the point where and so I can say, you know what, and I may be wrong about this. I'll never know this because we're not allowed socially to do the research necessary because this question is not allowed to be asked. So I don't think I'm ever going to be able to actually do the research. But I do
I was going to
suspect.
ask you, I was like, is there any data? And you just answered my question.
There is.
Can't be. Oh, there is.
Actually,
Okay.
there is. There is.
Okay.
It all dried up in the early 1990s, but from the late 40s through the 90s, if you go to any of the psych literature, not that it was ever perfect, but it was not corrupted the way today's psych industry is. Everybody fucking knew this. Everybody knew that gay men had overbearing, domineering bitch mothers. Everybody knew that gay men had troubled or violent or completely absent relationships with their fathers, right? This is a known pattern. But around the early 90s, it became unacceptable for that to be true. So everybody just stopped. The research just went like that. You get canceled now for even suggesting it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. You know, I just, do you know who, she went by Right Side, but now she goes by Hegelborg, the exclusionary. Do you know her? She does a lot of spaces.
Wait, what's her handle again?
It's exclusionary.
Is this, we're not talking about Yulan Sink, are we?
No, that's somebody
okay.
else.
We're talking about
But
somebody
we love
else.
Her too.
We know
okay.
her too, yeah.
Okay. No,
we also know Denny.
I might know who it was if I saw their blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But anyway, go ahead.
She was talking about, well, there's a German philosopher named Hegel, and she was talking about that whole thing and where all that stuff comes from. And she was explaining that to me, the identity of the trans identified person and why they can't hear us when we're talking about why we need our single sex spaces, that because they're what you just said. It's an attack on their actual soul.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. It's misguided, but it's common and it's easy to see it. I wish for people, I hope for people that they will get past it, because I know the benefit of getting past it. The benefit is, I can accept, I do suspect that my abusive upbringing was the deciding tipping point factor that made me gay. I do suspect that. I may have just turned out gay anyway. Some people apparently do.
Can I ask you how old do you think you were when you knew that you were gay? Or was it like an unfolding?
Well, interesting, because I've talked about this with my therapist. He's one of the old school therapists. He's 70 years old. He's straight. He's politically and culturally conservative. He was educated also in the hard sciences and got his degree well before woke took over everything. So, he's this really stable person to interact with. And I talked about this with him. And apparently my experience is common for adult gay men, but I am aware of having proto-sexual and proto-romantic feelings about boys and men starting at about age 7 or 8. Mm-hmm. And I remember having explicitly sexual fantasies about men prior to puberty. Mm-hmm. Now that's not normal. Most children don't start eroticizing things as early as I did. But when I talked to my therapist, he said it's almost universal in abused children. I was not directly sexually molested. Neither of my parents diddled me. But my sister was molested in the house that I grew up in by her father. And although nobody knew that at the time, I can tell you, because I remember, I knew something was going on. I didn't have a word for it, but I knew it. And I know goddamn well my mother knew it and turned a blind eye. Okay. But also, like many gay men, the relationship between me and my mother was what some people call covert incest or emotional incest. So while my mother did not fondle my genitals, she spoke to me sometimes in private ways that you would speak to a lover. She would tell me intimate details of her private life that I should not have been privy to. She would bring men into the home. Sometimes there were a couple of times when I woke up in the morning, went into the bathroom and found a man I'd never seen in my life standing in front of the toilet pissing. And there he'd be at the breakfast table and nobody said anything, right? you know, my mother would at times, it's subtle, but it happened. My mother would insist on, she did this all the way into adulthood. I was always to kiss her on the lips as a greeting. And I know some families do that, and I know that some cultures do that. Our culture here in America is not so much that.
Mm-hmm.
And it began to feel more and more uncomfortable and more skeevy. And so again, I wasn't directly sexually molested, but I was sexualized as a child early. So I think when you talk to gay men, most of them will tell you, I knew this when I was like 8 or 9 years old, and they are telling you the truth, the way their memory works, right? And I came out at 12 or 13, which in those days was young, very young.
I was just really, really curious. This is maybe something that you've discussed on your own show. I'll catch up on the other side of this. So forgive me if it's too personal a question. But you mentioned that you've had no contact with your mother for 8 years now.
Yep.
What was it, something in particular that happened at that moment in your life, or was that just when it all came to a head?
It all came to a head. I spent most of my life thinking I was telling myself and the world conflicting stories. I was my mother's biggest defender. I was the biggest defender of single mothers on welfare and how hard it was and how awful it was when men abandoned them. And it is awful when men abandon women. But what I've learned is that there are a lot of reasons for that abandonment, and 50% of the responsibility is usually on the woman, and 50% on the man. My mother certainly drove men away. I never met my father. He left while my mother was still pregnant with me. And I can goddamn well see why. It doesn't excuse him, doesn't excuse the irresponsibility of either of those two for doing that. But had I been my father, knowing who my mother is, I would have run too. She's crazy, and she's mean, and she's unpredictable, and she's scheming and manipulative. But I didn't allow myself to see this. I had to be my mother's rescuer and protector and stalwart and standard bearer. This was a defense that I'll go at it another way. All of my life, my dreams have usually been nightmares, very, very vivid and repetitive nightmares. And one of the most common nightmares was my mother humiliating me in some way. It could be a scenario like I would dream that my mother would attend my college graduation and get up on the stage and tell the president that I'm a high school dropout and I was not qualified to matriculate. And she'd take my diploma away from me in front of the entire auditorium and say, see, now everybody knows what you are. Or I would have dreams that my mother put me in jail, or that she had me convicted on a crime that I didn't commit. These are not very metaphorical, right? It doesn't, but I couldn't see through them, right? Then at about 40, I through a combination of unusual circumstances, I've never made a lot of money, but I bought a second house for my mother because I'd spent most of my life paying off back landlords so that she wouldn't get evicted, negotiating with her creditors on the phone, saving her from homelessness, right? And another crisis was coming, and I said, I'm the only one in my family who got to the bottom rung of the middle class. I have a white-collar job. I'm not made of money, but I at least have enough. I'm the eldest. I'm going to have to take care of her when she gets old. I may as well set this situation up. So I was like, okay, I'll buy this house that's a duplex. It's got 2 apartments, and it's just a house with 2 small apartments. I'm in the downstairs of that house right now. Move my mother in. I'll charge her well below market value for rent, and I'll pay for the house through the rent in the second apartment that goes out at market rate, right? So it was actually a very economically sensible plan. Moved my mother in. Now, mind you, I hadn't lived with her since I was 13 because she institutionalized me. I was taken out of the home in family court and put into an incorrigible boys' home. And I consciously chose not to live near my mother after that. But in all of the intervening years, I'd convinced myself that I could solve my mother's problem of poverty, and she'd finally become the person that she, blah, blah, blah. Well, 2 years went by, and my mother's insanity not only came back the same way it was when I was a child, but it had gotten worse. And she would do things like text or call me 20 to 30 times a day during the workday and weekdays, telling me, "Oh my God, my toilet's leaking. If you don't get over here right now, the whole thing." I mean, it could be anything. I don't know where my checkbook is. Help. It was constant. And because as you see, I still get a little worked up over it. And I ran and I dropped this and I started putting my job in jeopardy to take care of this. Yeah. And then she started doing things like she hated every tenant who moved into the other apartment. And mind you, I'm desperate. I've got to get somebody in there so that we can pay the bills. Because if I can't pay the mortgage, we're all out on the street, right? Yeah. And she kept fucking with my tenant relation. She would, I swear to God, she would actually go through my tenant's mailbox to figure out how many welfare and Medicaid and food stamp checks they were getting so that she could consider reporting them for fraud. And then she'd text me and tell me, well, Mary got blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, Mother, it is a crime. You can't rifle through people's mail. It was unbelievable. It was this kind of stuff all the time. Mm-hmm. And then I saw her, she was a danger to her husband. This is her, not my stepfather from childhood. He's dead and he's been gone a long time, but her husband now is a weaker, he's also a piece of shit, but he is a weaker man and he has an intellectual disability. And she was threatening him with cast iron skillets. I'm going to break your head open. She would put holes in the wall of the apartment, throwing things at him. And I began to get scared that she was going to kill him. So I tried to rescue him. He turned on me and said I was the crazy one because he's a codependent, and he, I believe he wants my mother to kill him, and that's what he will have. All of this came to a crisis point where it was the hardest thing that I have ever been through. And I had a heart attack at age 36 out of the blue, and that scared the living shit out of me. What I went through with my mother was so much worse. I'm not a suicide risk. I did try to kill myself when I was about 12 years old. I think it was more a cry for help than a real attempt. But I never tried again after that. But at 40, I'd been an alcoholic for 20 years, but at this point I was putting down more than a fifth of vodka every night. I was like, well, maybe if I take a handful of Valium and get really drunk, I'll die and I won't get up in the morning, and then I'll be over all of this. So that's the place that I was at. And what happened, I'll wrap this up. What happened was my mother's mask came off. I saw her for who she really was for the first time in my life. I looked in her eyes and in all this behavior, and it was clear. And if you'd been there, you would have seen what I saw. I said, she likes hurting me. She's smiling. This makes her happy. I'm at the edge of my sanity. I'm crying. I'm dysregulated. I can't go to work. And she's chuckling. She likes it. Mm-hmm. She means to hurt me, and she does want to take what's mine away from me. And in fact, she did. She and her husband went on a reputation smearing campaign and wrote to my board of directors, the supervisors that I answered to, and spilled dirty laundry in our family and accused me of things that had never happened. I had to manage a board of 9 people, apologizing embarrassedly. I said, I'm so sorry for my mother's behavior. It was awful. It was awful. They filed a false report with Adult Protective Services that I was an elder abuser. My mother wanted to destroy me.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And I realized this was the turning point in my life. It was, I hope I never feel this much pain again, but I am glad that this happened. It broke me. I was completely incompetent. I had to be broken. to get to the other side. So I'm glad that this happened. But
Mhm.
I saw her and I said, she's a bad person. She's a wicked person. She's not redeemable. She doesn't mean well and she's merely misguided. She's a bitch. She's evil.
Yeah.
And my sister is actually the one who woke me up, because when this behavior started to ramp up, I thought she was going into dementia. And so my sister and I somehow convinced her, screaming the entire time, to go to a doctor and get a cognitive test, which she passed, because there's nothing wrong with her, this kind of stuff. But my sister called me and she said, Josh, our mother is not demented. She's not senile. Our mother is a narcissist. I think she has a personality disorder, and I think you need to read up on cluster B, because I'd never heard of personality disorders. Well, I did spend 2 or 3 days reading. That's all I did from the minute I got up, because I immediately recognized my mother and my family in there. And it was a revelation. And I say this to anybody watching or listening to this who has a troublesome family member like this: learn about cluster B, because what happened as I was reading these tales from other people, it was like there was an industrial sorting machine where there was a hopper on the top and you could throw in all sorts of different products and they'd all neatly slot into the right. It was like ka-chunk, 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 ka-chunk. All of these crazy, inexplicable, disconnected behaviors that my mother did all of a sudden made sense. There was a taxonomy. I said, this is borderline personality disorder. This is why she acts this way. It was a revelation. So I had to accept that my mother did not love me, that my nightmares had been right my entire life. I had always known this deep down. My mother did not love her children, even though sometimes I think she thought she did. She didn't, because she's not capable of it. She did see us as her enemies, and she did actively try to destroy us. She did it consciously. That hurt me, because it confirmed my greatest fear, my greatest insecurity, and the source of my continuing insecurity is lack of a mother's love. I'm still very, very hurt by that. I'm not incapacitated as I was at that point, but that was, anyway, that's my story. But it's very similar to almost any other kid who has a family like mine.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for telling me. Yeah, your mother definitely sounds like a psycho bitch. So 8 years without her. I'm glad that you're free from that. You've got your life back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the podcast, The Mental Illness Happy Hour?
No, but that sounds intriguing.
That guy, the guy who's the host of that, he has a mother that yeah, you'll enjoy that show if you listen to it. I don't know if he gets into it in his first episode or whatever, but he has a good show. Are you the guy that was going to buy a Beetle, a Volkswagen? Yes. Did you?
No, I didn't.
I
know. Maybe next year.
Okay. Well, yeah, I was the one, I don't know if you remember, but I told you I had 2 kind of classic cars. I had a 1978 Super Beetle with a sunroof. It was orange.
Yes.
Yeah. And then I had a really cute, it was Granny Smith apple green Mazda RX-2. It had white vinyl interior and a wooden steering wheel. Right. I mean, they both got wrecked. Otherwise, I'd still have them both. Gosh, we'll have to do this again. You were really awesome. You're my new BFF, and
you guys are fun. Thank you.
I loved that. That was honestly really good fun, because it's like it's so clear that you're accustomed to podcasting, because you just talk and it's great, because it just flows. And but I love it. It makes our job a lot easier because we can just listen. So yeah, thank you. It's amazing. I hope we can do this again, because I feel there's about 20 million subjects that we didn't even touch on.
so many. I have all these notes that I didn't even get to, but it's fine. Yeah. So what do you want to tell the people where they can find you and what you're working on and all that good stuff?
Sure. Well, the show that Kevin Hurley and I do every week, I'm the host. He is the tech and producer guy, is called Disaffected, and it comes out once a week. We'll probably be doing more. We've got some expansion to do because we need to pay our bills. And I am unemployable in the respectable sector anymore because I say things in public that are not nice.
Twins. We're twins. We're literally identical fucking twins. I don't.
I used to bleach my hair platinum blonde too. Because of course I did, because Madonna was my queen. The show airs, listen to me, I'm such an old man. The show streams on different platforms. Sunday nights at 9 p.m. US Eastern Time on Twitter/X, Rumble, and YouTube. It's called Disaffected. We, as part of the show, we have a Substack, the Disaffected newsletter. So go on to disaffectedpod.substack.com. And we are on Twitter, although I'm in Twitter jail this week, which is why you haven't heard from me. Our Twitter is @disaffectedpod. Let me just tell you this before we go, because it's so fucking stupid.
Kay's always in Twitter jail.
Always. Yeah. It's been a while, actually.
It has been a while.
But yeah.
You know, it's partially Twitter's fault and it's partially my fault. On social media, I am my most reactive emotionally on social media. Like if you look at me on Twitter, I don't blame any of you. Like, you're acting like a borderline. Yeah, I know. In actual real life, in any context other than the hyper crucible that is Twitter, I'm far calmer than you see me on Twitter. But so I end up reacting to everything. And some dude said something really stupid and insulting and dumb. And like, I just like to tell people where to go. So I said, go fuck yourself gently with a chainsaw, which is a line from a movie called Heathers from the 1980s.
Fuck me gently with a chainsaw. Do I look like Mother Teresa?
I swear to God, as my finger was releasing from the enter key, the screen immediately flashed up. It was that AI rapid. You have broken our rules against encouraging and inciting violent conduct and blah, 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 blah. And, you know, Twitter does that Kafka game where it's asymmetrical informational warfare. So they will not tell you the consequences. If you click the button, they won't tell you what consequences are on the others. It's abusive. It's psychopathic. It is cluster B abusive how they operate. So they, no, I mean completely, literally, I'm not even trying to make a metaphor. You know, they're like, you can delete the tweet and everything will be fine. And I hit delete. Your account will be reactivated in 6 days and 23 hours. They won't even tell you the consequence. You have to just say, okay, I'll take it. I mean, it's so stupid. It's so stupid. Meanwhile, we got people all over Twitter just literally like, I hope Donald Trump gets killed next time. I hope they put a bullet through his brain. That is absolutely, totally fine. It is not a violation of Twitter rules. But me saying fuck yourself gently with a chainsaw means I need to be silenced for a week.
Yeah. By the way,
well, I've been there.
Rest in peace, Shannon Doherty from Heathers.
Oh, I know. I just saw that last night.
So yeah,
really sad.
Fuck me gently with a chainsaw, Heather.
I know. What's your damage?
Yeah, right? Martha.
Right, Josh, next time we get together, I'm going to tell you all about the crazy personality disordered, insane man that's been pestering me for like the past year of my life, right? And I'm going to give you I'm just going to give you the whole story on him, and you can like diagnose him, tell me what's coming next, you know.
Oh, I love it. I'd love to. Oh, by the way, anybody who wants to, I also do 1 hour video coaching and consulting sessions. It's not therapy.
Okay.
So if anybody wants to book an hour and talk about the crazy, joshuaslocum.net. I am looking forward to doing some diagnosing with you next time we get together this week. I
can't wait. Awesome. I can't wait. That's my kind of party. Yeah, I might bring wine while you do all the professional stuff. Okay, cool. Thank you, Josh.
Well, thank you both. Yeah, it's good to meet you. Thank you for having me.
Good to meet you too. We'll see you soon on the Twitter sphere. Bye, everybody.
It is Mel